Welcome everybody to the 5th day of the week. This is not the second recording of this video. I can promise you that because I did not forget to record and Flame is all chill over there. But it's Friday and you know what that means?
Well, that means TLF, man. And today we're gonna have a special episode because the meta hasn't actually started. The season hasn't actually started, although the patch is live.
No data.
We don't really know
Nothing.
how good shit is.
Nada.
So what we can talk about, however, is how fun and potentially strong the tier sets are for melee DPS. So we don't talk until tomorrow about the whole video. Yeah. Again, everything will come full circle once the full raid is released, once everybody has the double legendaries and the full tier sets and a lot of gear. So until then, we're kind of still speculating. However, we have tested the tier sets and how they affect the playstyle, the numbers to an extent, but mostly we're going to be talking about fun.
The impact and fun, all of that. And you know what's really impactful these times? Having super cool clothing, merch, and we have this opportunity to let you know that we have relaunched the store for MarcelianOnline merch. It's on TeePublic right now. You can check it in the description. Now, if you want to rock that Assassino Criticalando tier shirt, or a TLF hoodie, or an on cooldown mug, or whatever, you can check it out in the description. There's a couple of new designs over there. There's a couple of old ones that we really like, and much more is being worked on. So you have to check that out, like on a weekly basis, okay?
It's good swag and it helps us out.
It's very good swag indeed.
Coined here, MarcelianOnline.
So this is another great way to support the channel, and it's a win-win basically. So check it out, see if there's anything you like. But after you watch the video, okay? And by the way, they have some really cool sales right now. Like everything is like, I don't know, 30% off or something. So do check it out. That being said, it's time to go and check out the Arms Warrior tier set, baby. And we love Arms, we love playing it, and I feel just from the get-go, we're gonna get into the tier set bonus. Yeah, that's a cool arm. Just from the get-go, I feel the tier set really amplifies the playstyle of Arms Warrior, being, you know, tactical and mindful of things.
For me, since I'm an Arms fan, I'm trying very hard not to be biased. Essentially, what the two-piece does is that the Colossus Smash, or Warbreaker, will last 3 seconds longer, which is gonna be good, and it's gonna figure into the 4-piece set.
And more damage.
And you deal 5% more damage to targets affected by it, as opposed to the already existing buff, which is okay. It's flat damage buff. It's not amazing.
It's good.
But we're getting to the 4-piece, where your Tactician has a 50% increased chance to proc against targets that have been Colossus smashed. And your next overpower that you cast will give you 2% bonus strength for 15 seconds, and this can stack up to 20%.
That's huge, dog.
This is a lot of strength that the more you can maintain it, and this is the fun part of the tier set, the better you will do. And it's a flat buff that can obviously work in both single target and AoE. It doesn't just change the mechanics of your rotation. You're still gonna be playing the same thing. So, and plus, because that's really good because Arms is already a tactical spec. So it's basically more flavor baked into that tactical spec, which on paper it sounds really cool, and I'm actually personally anxious to play it, since I do a main Warrior Dispatch, although prot. I'll still be fucking around with the Arms tier set.
So A tier, baby?
A tier, baby, let's go.
Okay, A tier for sure. Now, next one on the list will be Assassination Rogue. And I feel like Assassination Rogue has been granted a lot more prowess in AoE because of the 2 set, which will have Shiv basically enable a big, I would say, what was it, 40% buff 40% to the damage. Poisons and bleeds to the targets around in 15 yards.
15, yeah.
That's really good AoE prowess, but also we'll have Vendetta for the 4-piece, which will have the poisons and bleeds tick 100% faster. Now, the thing about this is definitely bigger damage in all around the place. The Shiv enabling it to be a lot more damage in AoE. It doesn't really change a lot like the playstyle of Assassination Rogues. It will just, I would say, have better rewards for the micromanagement of bleeds and dots you have to deal with, especially in Mythic Plus, which is really, really cool.
I mean, it's a fun concept. It's
definitely. It doesn't impact anything really. You know, I would say that what you have to be aware of as an Assassination Rogue moving forward is when you do pop that Vendetta, and obviously those bleeds and poisons will take a lot faster. So micromanagement will come into play even more, right?
A little bit of prep work, having bleeds and poisons out before Vendetta.
But the reward is there. I mean, you're gonna get a lot more damage from it. Now, bleeds taken faster equals a lot more damage because you're going to reapply them, and that means that it will have more damage ticking in a lower time frame. more damage, right? And also the fact that Shiv will enable like 40% increased damage to the bleeds for targets around, also more damage. So in terms of like the fun, yeah, it's there, a lot more passive, but I would say the main fun component comes from the reward of you being an assassination rogue in mostly AoE. So I would say B tier is the fairest argument.
A safe spot. We don't know exactly how much damage this will mean, and probably the only reason why it's not higher is because it's still relying heavily on dealing dot damage, which is a little bit inconsistent unless you're doing like super high level content where there's enough time for those dots to tick, and Blizzard has been kind of against dots for a good amount of time, so that's probably what's keeping it from being a little bit higher.
Okay, next up, the star of 9.2, baby, Enhancement Shaman.
Let's boogie. All right. So quick disclaimer for Enhancement, we're looking mostly at the tier set and the fun aspect of it, because if we're going to be looking at the whole the spec, it would probably be placed higher, but for now, Enhancement's tier set makes it so that the two-piece spec bonus is whenever you spend Maelstrom Weapon, you have a 3% chance per stack, that's usually 5 at a time, to summon a Feral Spirit for 9 seconds. So every time you use a Maelstrom Weapon proc on Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, that's 5 total stacks, you'll have a 15% chance to summon a Wolf. So that's going to be like a bunch more wolves. And obviously these wolves help you in single target damage, which is kind of where Enhancement was suffering a little bit. And depending on the wolf that you get, you might, you know, get more frost damage or more fire damage and stuff like that. Now, your 4-piece makes it so that your feral spirits, your wolf attacks, have a 20% chance to trigger Stormbringer, resetting the cooldown of your Storm Strike. So Enhancement has kind of always been a very RNG heavy spec, probably the most heavy RNG spec in the game. Now, having more Stormbringer procs, you basically cast more Storm Strikes, so you essentially just have a higher chance at generating Maelstrom Weapon, again playing in the 2-piece, summoning more Feral Spirits that give you more chances to proc Stormbringer, so this is kind of like a really nice feedback loop that will just pump. It will just pump. Oh, yeah. Sure, the Feral Spirit damage in and of itself is single target, but obviously when you consume everything with Maelstrom Weapon, you're going to be doing AoE as well. So I see Enhancement as an A tier with everything else that changed with Flame Shock Spread and all of that. It could be S tier in the meta, but in the terms of tier set, it's fun kind of A tier. Yeah. Mostly because it's a lot of damage, because the effect is okay.
Yeah, I'll put it in front of arms on A tier. All right, now for the kitty cats, which I feel very sorry of because of the recent nerfs, totally unjustifiable. But we're gonna have to judge this from the fun perspective of the set, and we have to add the impact, because the impact because of the nerfs is like really punishing. So essentially, 2-piece for ferals was that on each combo point spent would reduce the cooldown of Berserk or Incarn if you talented that. And it would basically by 0.5 seconds, I believe it would basically bring your Berserk or Incarn to a close to a 2-minute cooldown. That was nice and dandy. The 4-piece was like the star of the show, because whenever you proc Berserk, you would have a massive hit, which would scale initially for 700% of your attack power, like to all targets around. That's what I call AoE burst. Now, after that, obviously, you have to put on, your Primal Wrath and apply, the rips and everything like that. But that huge burst would really pop you in front of it. And this was one of the biggest weakness of Feral Druids, right? Now, after that, the nerfs came along.
More than half. It's now scaling off of 320% attack power, which is, I mean, it sounds like it's a lot still, but you do need to remember that this is a bleed over 10 seconds. It's not like an instant hit. It's a bleed over 10 seconds, and it's obviously capped at 8 targets with potentially.
This was also damage. It wasn't capped initially.
Yeah, initially it wasn't capped. They capped it and reduced the scaling to a big amount that essentially hits Feral in the head with a big conk. And kind of
this is the main reason why. So the tier set was really fun. I actually was super hyped when I saw it. It's like, oh yes, finally. I actually was talking to Yildiz. I was thinking about actually making Feral again, but because of this, however fun it sounded initially, the impact is really nasty. So I was really close to putting it into D tier, but it's still a fun tier set just purely out of that. So we'll
there's
put it
a chance that they can still buff it, so Feral might climb like 1 or 2 spots at least.
Hopefully, we can only wish, because there was unjustifiable nerfs. But then again, we have something on the opposite side, which is the Frost
Decay with potentially. At least in the technical sense, one of the best tier sets designed. Why? Because it addresses kill machine procs. okay, sure. First of all, the 2 set piece gives you 8% critical strike chance while your Remorseless Winter is up, which is something that you have been kind of maintaining for the past couple of years anyway, so that's a little bit passive. Obviously, crit strike works well into getting more killing machine, which is amazing. That's basically what you want. Now, when you consume a killing machine proc with Obliterate, essentially you will proc a Glacial Advance. What that does is Glacial Advance, if you don't know, it's a talent. It was the Legion artifact ability, and it shoots out, dealing frost damage to everything, and applies Razor Ice, which is the debuff that you normally get from the Razor Ice Runeforged weapon that makes you do more frost damage to the affected targets. The reason why this is good is it can enable the two-handed playstyle even more, since the main issue of the two-handed playstyle is that you couldn't have 2 weapons to have 2 Runeforges. Yeah, but now you can forgo, you can essentially forgo the Razor Ice Runeforge to just have the Fallen Crusader one on the main hand and still be able to do extra frost damage. Not only that, but it will probably also bump two-handed frost even higher on a single target, probably overtaking Breath of Sindragosa, depending on number. It was kind of competitive in single target with Breath of Sindragosa. And also now, since Glacial Advance is an AoE application of Razor Ice, which again was another issue by running two-handed, Frost Decay solves that problem as well, and you could potentially take Obliteration into Mythic Dungeons as well. And obviously, if you even play Night Fae, to have those Obliterations, goddammit, cleave from the Death's Due, aka the Death and Decay upgrade, that can make Frost into a potential sleeper OP monster spec of a DPS. So I'm having high hopes for Frost. It sounds amazing. I'm actually going to have my DK as an alt, and usually I would have alted Unholy, but Frost baby, Frost baby.
I mean, it's fun purely because it finally provides that alternative to Breath, which I think is really cool. A lot of people didn't really actually enjoy it, but it was like the most viable thing. So this is why, like the interaction, the fact that it gives you an alternative, really cool. That doesn't mean people will not be able to opt in for Breath. You can still go for it. It's all good. Of course. But you have this now. Moving along to Fury Warriors, which again, in terms of like the pure fun, it's there. It's not like super impactful because we all know Fury is a little bit more of a spammy spec and a little bit more fluid, I would say. But once again, let's go to it. So Raging Blow will deal increased damage. You will have 1 charge. This is the 2-piece set, yes. And the 4 set will have your Raging Blow have a 20% chance to cast Recklessness for 4 seconds. And I feel this is really, really cool because for a GCD fluid spec like Fury, it's much more valuable. You're going to get a lot of hits over there. Now, sure, Raging Blow is not like, I think, not on the top of the priority. No. But like with the damage...
So Raging Blow over the last 2 expansions, I feel has taken a hit into how good the ability is and has come to be a little bit in the tail end, but it's not a bad ability to press. And I know that the Skyhold boys have tested this tier set as well, so I'm pretty sure that the mechanic of Recklessness will work to keep adding on top of each other to extend the duration, which could be really good. It's a very fast-paced spec, and will definitely be pushing Raging Blow higher on your priority list. We're not essentially sure if it's going to change what talents you use, although it does seem like it will have an interaction with Reckless Abandon as well to make your what was it again, Crushing Blow also affect this, although by talenting into Reckless Abandon and proccing the Recklessness, you probably won't be getting the Rage as well, because that would have probably been a little bit too OP. However, it's fun, it's fast-paced. The thing is, Raging Blow going from an underwhelming ability to potentially the best one is a big leap, as opposed to other specs that just have their best ability bumped up higher instead of a weaker ability. So that's probably why Fury isn't higher, although I could definitely see this being like an S tier spec, because it's fun, it's fast-paced, it does what Fury does. So A tier, I think.
A tier is definitely the, I would say, fairest point here, because once again, this tier set like synergizes 2 set and 4 set beautifully. It enables even more fluidity within the spec and has Raging Blow moving a little bit up there in terms of like pressing it. So 100% fun, impactful. Let's go. Havoc Demon Hunter, not that much, but hey,
I mean,
Metamorphosis, cooldown reduction.
Okay, so if you've watched our Havoc podcast with the Havoc boys, you know that the main issue with Havoc is that it doesn't have a burst cooldown. Metamorphosis is not necessarily a burst cooldown, it's just way more high sustained damage output, which was on a weird cooldown considering how the raid mechanics were designed, where a lot of specs, let's say like Boomies, had their Incarn every 3 minutes with their Frenzy,
And
Ravenous
Incarn
Frenzy,
was, you know,
and they managed to melt bosses and skip through phases because of that very strong 3-minute burst, which even with the 4-piece that the Havoc has, reducing the metamorphosis cooldown whenever you spend 60 Fury, it still doesn't get it to like that 3-minute mark. It's just a little bit above 3-minute mark, meaning that it will not align with, let's say, specs like Boomy that might have their entire raid changed to adjust to their 3-minute cooldown. And as well in dungeons, you if let's say you have a spec that with a very strong 3-minute cooldown, you will not be able to match with it. And if you have a strong 2-minute cooldown, it will not match that either. And even if it does match all those, it's still not a burst cooldown. It's just like it raises the floor of the damage that it can do by like a level or 2, which is, I mean, it's great, but it's probably not what Havoc needed the most.
Yeah, and it's boring. The 2 set just increases the damage of Annihilation and Dead Sweep by 20%. Obviously, Dead Sweep and Chaos Strike when you're metaing. It's nothing impactful. It's nothing game changing. It's just there, and it doesn't really address much of anything.
It's okay-ish, but
yeah, but it's
they
not.
could have done more than okay.
Oh yeah, in terms of fun and impact, not that high. I would put it in front of Feral a little bit still, but
it's probably not
just because
B-tier.
it's better damage. That's it.
It's probably better damage, but the only reason why it's probably not B and higher is because it's not that interesting. Anyway, we've had meta cooldown reductions before, and still Havoc was okay, but it was never like outshining specs because of the mechanic.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's move along to the Outlaw Rogues, which have a really interesting tier set, and I feel it basically addresses some of the single target. But when you talk about Outlaw single target, you have to understand that single target is also AOE, right? The blade flurry and stuff. So what happens is that the 2-piece will enable like your main gauge to trigger a pistol shot, which is really cool. 25% chance to trigger a pistol shot, and then the 4-piece will have your pistol shot have a 100% chance, and this is really cool thematically, right? So a chance to load a hidden bullet from your sleeves up to 6 times. Now, after you load the 6 bullets, your next pistol shot will also fire a between the eyes on your target where the combo points are spent. Now, it's really cool. It's basically a free between the eyes, really good buff on the target. Again, it feels like it's single target-ish, affecting obviously the AoE as well. I just feel it's really cool thematically, and it sounds like a really, really fun tier set. It's not A-tier material because
you know what would make it A-tier though is if you had a lot more control over on Between the Eyes, because since it's all proc based, then what do you do? Do you use Between the Eyes back to back if they proc, if you have the proc and you have the actual finisher?
This is the thing. It's 100%. So you load up the bullets 100%, right, from pistol shot.
Yeah.
The thing is, the pistol shot procs are still RNG-ish, so it will not happen like back to back.
You might want to actually press pistol shot normally, which you don't really want to do as an outlaw, because if I'm not mistaken, it costs more energy and does less damage.
Yeah,
than,
you want the procs, but it's good. I mean, it's good. You get more procs from it, which is it's really cool. The only thing is, why I would not put it in A tier is Outlaw already has a lot of things to be wary of and monitor and all of that. A lot of buttons to press. So this will only add on top of that. And I feel it for us. This is our opinion. I know a lot of Outlaw players enjoyed this. I personally don't, so it's, I would say, B tier, not shit, definitely super fun and super nice thematically, but because of all of the things that's happening with Outlaw when you're playing it, we're keeping it in there. Next up, Red Paladins.
Oh, now, here we go.
Red Paladins, this is what I'm going to main in 9.2. I've tested this as well. Lego has tested this too. So just to make a couple of disclaimers, Red Paladins are really, really good. They're not S tier, not A tier, but they are really, really good. They have been buffed, stealth buff for their 2-piece, having the Seraphim duration from 2 seconds to 3 seconds, which will enable more GCDs in that window. Really good. Also, that if you have already Seraphim popped up, that will extend your existing Seraphim. Something that people were not really wary about, because you can basically have more and more Seraphim uptime because of this. Now, obviously, one downgrade, it's still RNG, right? It's Art of War procs. Leave it like that. Now, the 4-piece will have your Art of War have a cheap 50% chance to reset the cooldown of Wake of Ashes. And I heard a lot of complaints on our videos on this, on the Hammer of Wrath Discord. And when Lego tested it, when I tested it, The procs were insane, man, especially when we're doing dungeons. They were insane. There was so many of them, and it felt really cool, not to mention the Seraphim ones as well. So in terms of fun, I really like that it changes the whole playstyle of Red that we currently had in Shadowlands, like all of that build-up, you know, but it was good, but it always felt like everybody was just in front, and up until you made all of your things prepped up.
Too long on the build up on the prep work.
This changes because Zeal will basically be used like almost exclusively. It will kill the execution sentence, and also Crusade might be looking to be replacing Final Reckoning, and it will change a lot. We'll just have to see. But again, purely fun. I would put this into an A tier because I love it. Yeah. This is it. I wouldn't say it's as fun as the Arms Warrior, but it's definitely on A tier. Not biased at all. Not biased at all.
All right. Well,
next
moving
up,
on to Subrogue, and I know you have a lot to say. I'm just gonna shout out my quick piece on the Subrogue. Sure. So for a non-rogue player, because I kind of know the very basics of Subrogue, the 2-piece make Shadow Strike have a 15% chance to proc the Shadow Blades. For what is it, 3-4 seconds now? I think it has been changed as well.
Yeah, it was initially 5 seconds, but I think it's 3 now.
Yeah, which is kind of like Seraphim, but I feel like Subrogue is a little bit more faster paced than Red, so it makes use of that duration a little bit better. But what's even more interesting is that your 4-piece makes it so your finishers have a 3% chance per combo point to proc a Shadow Blades on all the targets. Shadow Strike on up to 5 enemies around you, which of course each Shadow Strike that procs will give you a combo point, so you can essentially go from finisher to finisher, which is the first cool part if you are lucky to get the proc. So that's there's that moment, which is kind of something that we like to have every now and again. But more importantly is that it addresses the main issue, which I'm gonna let you talk about because you've played it.
Yeah, I said it a million times before. You know, it's the Cleave situation, right? So when I tested this initially on the PTR, it felt amazing, but back then it was a little bit buggy because you can like get procs to procs back to back to back. It was a little bit insane. But how it works essentially is that in 9.1, when you had a situation where you had 2 or 3 targets, you didn't have anything to like properly generate combo points to like hit individually. You would just like, you know, do a little bit of single target rotation and put Rupture on everybody, and that was it. Now with this, having Shadow Strike deal damage to more targets, that means more combo point generation, and that means more eviscerates onto all of those targets individually. And it procs a lot. It feels like it has addressed the issue, not to mention the Shadow Blaze proc as well, which is not super impactful, but it does generate extra combo points. It has a little bit of extra damage there. So yay in all departments. It felt amazing. All sub-rogues that played this spec for a while and tested this enjoyed it to the fullest. So it felt fun. It felt impactful, played in right into the fantasy of the sub-rogue. And it has to be S tier, man.
Combo after combo after combo, which is probably why I see it as S tier as well.
Yeah.
Since it does feel like although it's a little bit RNG-ish, it feels like a no-nonsense tier. Says like, okay, man, you're gonna do combo points. Oh, you didn't like hitting few targets. Okay, there you go. Now you can hit fewer targets as well and be happy about it.
Yeah, but it's really cool and fun and impactful. Definitely worthy of an S tier. Not looking at damage numbers, okay? Just saying. Now, Survival Hunter.
Looking at damage numbers, Survival Hunter has received a major AoE buff in the tier set.
Because it needed AoE
now.
buff.
Okay, so it was the victim of a couple of bugs. And I'm gonna tell you exactly. The bugs were essentially addressed, to my knowledge, and I'll actually explain in a blue post, but I digress. So essentially, the 2 set makes it so that when your kill command resets, it has a 40% chance to make your next wildfire bomb incur no cooldown. This is a little bit weird because you're probably gonna be playing wildfire infusion, and with the red bomb pheromones, you're just gonna get like a bunch of bombs right now. So this is fun in the sense that you might care about the red bomb a little bit more, and that also comes as an RNG, so if you don't get it, then it is what it is. But although I don't think that's a major issue, however, your 4th set makes it so that your wildfire bombs deal 30 additional damage, and don't forget that if you use the talent on the 2nd row, that gives you more single target damage from your bombs, also buffs your single target to an extent. When the bonus is increased to 80% for bombs that are empowered by your 2 set piece. So essentially it's more bombs. With the tactical wildfire battle gear legendary, you'll just have a lot of AoE damage, like a buttload of AoE damage, which is great. However, Survival already had really good AoE damage. Obviously, couldn't compare to stuff like, you know, Frost Mage and things like that in dungeons at the very least. But Survival was suffering from single target issues in raids. In pure single target scenarios, you could barely play the bomb legendary, or you probably wouldn't play it at all this year. You'll probably play the trap legendary. Now with this being changed, you're probably not going to be playing trap legendary. So you're essentially your AoE rotation is your single target, and that single target is not bumped enough. Let's say where Sub Rogue would have had that tier set that really addressed its weak point, Survival just has more damage. And I think that's what it keeps it from being
I'll take it.
So the damage is really good unless they nerf it with like a big fat hammer. Survival is a solid A tier. It has the potential to be S tier as well, but I don't think the tier set will change to a point where I could see Survival as an S tier unless the damage is just stupid and not addressed at all.
All right. Now let's move along to the Unholy Decay, which I feel had like one of the weirdest tier sets and one of the most.
You know
boring.
what? I think Unholy Decay is an excuse for us to have something into D tier.
Could be.
Okay. The DPS spec of choice for DK for me has always been Unholy. Now the 2 set piece makes it so that every 5 bursting of wounds with your Scourge Strike or Festering Wounds puts a Soul Reaper on your target. And calls out an army of the dead ghoul for 15 seconds, which is a little bit lackluster. It's pure single target focused, pure priority damage, let's say if you're in a dungeon. And the Soul Reaper essentially doesn't do much unless the target is in execute range.
Yeah.
At least it won't cost a rune for you, because that's mainly why you would never use Soul Reaper unless in execute range. But I digress. Let's move to the 4th set, where your minions do 5% increased damage. It's kind of a little bit of your mastery. That's a very tiny bit of your mastery, which is very boring. However, when the Soul Reaper's secondary effect triggers, aka the execute damage, the bonus increases to 25% for 8 seconds. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. I'm assuming it just does way more damage, unless they're essentially talking about the fact that, you know, if the target doesn't die, then you gain Runic Corruption. So this can affect the Runic Corruption generation as well. However, it's again still single target. Sure, you can potentially have Soul Reaper swap it from pack to pack to like snipe it, but I don't feel like it addresses the main issues of Unholy. It's a little bit wonky. It seems a little bit too complicated. It's not very straightforward. I can see like new players thinking it's like, wait, what?
Not fun. Not
What
fun.
is that? It has the potential to do damage again, but we'll have to see exactly how Unholy scales.
But
just because of that.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not very fun, and you don't really have a lot of agency as opposed to what target you burst the wounds on if you're an AoE, and if you're in single target, I mean,
no, I think it's a worthy D tier for now.
It could be higher, but I feel like they could have done a way better job at handling Unholy instead of putting Soul Reaper, which has always been like a meh ability.
Now, the last one on the list, Windwalker Monks. And this personally, I feel is overall a good change. I know, you know,
in the right direction.
Yeah, this is the thing. With what happened with Necrolords essentially in 9.1, you really didn't use Fist of Fury all that much. I mean, you just use it to fill it up, and then you would cancel it basically. I think they don't want that, and the fact that they're trying to bring back Fist of Fury, which I always felt like it was iconic. I felt this is why I didn't even play that much Windwalker to begin with. I didn't really like the play style with all the spinning cray kicks and all of that shit. Now it appears that at least from the 2 set bonus, you get Fist of Fury increased by 40%, which is really big bump in damage for people who will prioritize it for sure. The 4-piece will have you like after you use 10 offensive abilities, your next 3 offensive abilities will deal 22% extra damage. This is like buffs all around. I would say this. I always found Windwalker Monks super fun to play. I love the fact that they're trying to bring back Fist of Fury more on the front line. Again, I feel that is one of the most iconic spells this spec has ever had, and it was a shame that in 9.1 it was basically not used. This 4-piece, however, kind of plays into the fantasy of it because, you know, obviously because of the mastery of the spec, you will express different abilities and such. After you do those 10 spells, the other 3 ones, so you can actually plan around it. It's really interesting. I know Babylonius wasn't super excited about it. It's good, but not that great. In terms of fantasy and purely fun, I would definitely put it into A tier, but I don't think it's enough in terms of like the impact of it. So maybe
I would probably bump it down to like a B tier, considering the kind of specs that we have in A tier.
Oh yeah,
and what they get. I mean, the damage is just like flat damage increase. The last I checked what the theory crafters were able to look at, especially Babylonius is on Windwalker, it wasn't entirely sure if those 3 offensive abilities have to be specific abilities like Rising Sun Kick or maybe Fist of the Fury, because you are kind of like very GCD specific. You cannot just press any ability that you want. Sure, you might have some sort of agency and the settings like, okay, in like 7 globals, I'll need to be able to press these abilities. You kind of don't want that, especially if you're playing Whirling Dragon Punch. You want to cast that on cooldown as fast as possible, Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Fury as on cooldown as fast as possible as well, while making use of the Blackout Kick to reduce the cooldown as much. So you are pretty set in stone as to how and when your globals will go. So likely having the 4-piece buff, 3 abilities that you want is not going to happen very often. So that's why maybe Windwalker won't be as high as it could be.
Yeah, but overall, this is kind of the image of it. You know, the tier sets for Melee in terms of like more fun and impact, I would say. We kind of tested a majority of these specs, and we had Lego test all of them, like the latest, and had his notes down over there. So we have looked into it, but this is like judging from the outside and just purely how cool it is to have
and
them.
Some numbers as well, because obviously Feral would have been a little bit higher.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to when I say impact, right? Like impact would be, okay, how impactful would this feel for the spec, and that's obviously damage as well. But it's kind of things will probably change. I'm expecting, you know, more tuning to be done. It's not like it wouldn't be super shocking for them to start.
I'm expecting some buffs to Feral and maybe some nerfs to Survival, or at least some changes. But until then, anything can happen. And speaking about anything can happen, what can happen is you get to check our Patreon link down below, because you will be sent to our Patreon page if you want to support us a little bit more, if you like the video. And that's where we have the most amazing people supporting our content. So thank you, dear patrons, for making TLFs, class guides, opinion pieces, news shows, podcasts,
all of the content that we do.
Everything.
Here. Yeah, it's been a blast, and it's been humbling to have all of you guys supporting. And you know, you can get a lot of cool rewards out of it, like the Patreon monthly chats with you guys, bloopers videos, character wallpapers for your desktop or whatever. So just check out the link, see if there's anything you might be interested in. Thank you for watching the video.
Hope you enjoyed it.
See you very soon.
See you next time.
Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.